Hello there, friends. Daniel Carey here, and I want to welcome you back to my second book review. And I hope you enjoyed my first one. This one tonight is going to be on a special kind of sci fi story that I enjoyed reading earlier this year. It is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. Now, this novel was published in 2013, and it already has spawned a series. There is Red Rising. Book 2 is Golden Sun. Book 3 is Morning Star. And then there's an additional fourth and fifth book in the series. I can't remember the name right now. But this is the debut novel of the author, and this is also the first book in his series of these stories. This is set in a future on the planet of Mars. And it consists of a fight to the death style plot. This book came out when the Hunger Game movies were really being popular and when they were really generating a lot of publicity. So I don't know if Pierce Brown happened to write this at the time that the books came out and it just got noticed at that point, or if this was just his own creation that he made up and he thought of that without any inspiration by Suzanne Collins. But yes, this is a kind of survival of the fittest type story plot line. Our main character was named Darrow. Now, Darrow lives in a color caste system on Mars, and his color caste is the Reds, are the Reds. Darrow works as a hell diver, which is a mining group of people that work and drill for resources and minerals under the surface of Mars, and they are basically exploited and manipulated by the Gold Society. The Golds are the top class, and they have all the power. There are many different colors, though. There's blues, greens, violets, browns, purples, but the lowest caste of all are the Reds. And our hero Darrow belongs to this group. The work is dangerous that he does and short-lived. He's always risking his life, but he works and provides for his family, and he has a very young wife named Io, who's named after a planet of Jupiter, which I found pretty interesting. But Io also works within the society, and they are basically told by the Gold Society that they work for the greater good for all people. And so Darrow tends to buy into this and believe that he's making a difference, but his attitude changes very quickly as the story progresses. Now the story picks up when Darrow loses his wife to the Gold Tyrants. They are out past their curfew time, and they're found in a place they're not supposed to be. And so they're both punished, and then Darrow's wife causes an uproar, and she is finally executed. She defies the tyrants, the Gold Society, and stands up and wants to liberate her people and really encourages Darrow to do the same. But she is publicly executed, and then Darrow just is traumatized and knocked out and supposedly executed, but he's able to survive through the help of some people within his society, and they convince him to work as basically as a mole. They're going to disguise him as a member of the Gold Society and change his whole identity, his biology, his outward appearance, his physicality, to make him appear to be a member of the Gold Society. So his mission is to infiltrate the highest levels of power within the Gold Society and gain favor with some houses that have all the power, and then betray them and destroy them. So that way he can liberate the Red people, his own people, and they can not be held down by their gold oppressors anymore, but they can rise and be a free people. So it's disguising himself and becoming this other character. And then as a young gold, he knows that he needs to compete in the gold society and survive these battles that happen. And so he is a member that needs to go and fight, and with his house on the landscape of Mars, and this landscape in the future is changed dramatically, and it looks like a landscape, a forested landscape on Earth. But anywhere there's all these houses that are fighting and competing, it's very much like in the style of Hunger Games. It's a survival of the best house, and they are the last house that wins. They are the winners, and then they will have the favor of the gold houses, and they will gain affluence and power. And this is Darrow's end goal, so that he can then help his people by destroying the gold society from within. So that's the premise of the story. I felt that the story would have probably worked better if there had been more time set aside for character development. You do get to know Darrow because so much of the story is first person interior monologue. So he's describing what he's going through, and the agony he faces, losing his love, and losing his place in his society, and basically becoming an outcast, but then fighting for his people by being disguised as a member of a different society. It was a very interesting premise for a plot in the story, but unfortunately we didn't have almost any time to know other characters. Secondary characters have very little development. So there's just very little time for any exposition as well. We just begin the story right away, and there is Darrow and his wife come to be punished, and then the story picks up, but we don't have much backstory about his family and the people in it. So it's hard to really get attached to these characters because you spend so little time with them. You're just moving ahead to Darrow so quickly. So there's not much time to build that connection with the characters, except for Darrow. It's really his main story. So those were some things that I found were missing in my enjoyment of the story. Because this is a fight to the death style narrative, Brown certainly doesn't shy away from violence in any form. There are surprise attacks, there are executions, there are betrayals, and murders that occur frequently within the storyline. There's always a dreaded character lurking in the shadows of the story called the Jackal, and I won't give anything away, but he's an ominous character, and so you're always wondering, and Darrow's always wondering, how can I survive this guy? How can I get out on top and make sure that I have enough men to fight this threat? So that's an interesting part of the story that was there. But there's always a violent element to this story. There's many different scenes. So if you're kind of turned away by that, you might want to pick a different book. But it's a very enjoyable story narrative. It's just there is that element. There's not much bad language or promiscuity, but there is certainly a good amount of violence within the storyline itself. Things that I felt the novel... The things that I felt the novel did well, one thing I really enjoyed about the novel was how the story was imaginative, but worked well in this case. With our introduction of Darrow, though it was so limited because he had such terrible experiences early in the story, we are inevitably drawn to his plight, and we want to cheer for him in his mission to liberate his people. Darrow also sees the dilemma of friendships that he makes within the Gold Society with these people, these young people that he works with in these battles on Mars. He is working to survive, but he's also disguised as a Red member, so he knows that at some point in the future he's going to have to betray all these people that he's working with within the story that are Gold members. And so there's that kind of inner conflict that you see within Darrow, and that he is trying to come to terms with. he's making these friendships, but then ultimately he has to betray these people because he wants to rescue his own group of the Reds, his own community, to save them. So that is an interesting twist to the story. So these are done well. So this is a very good story for fast-paced action and friendship and betrayals, and there's romance and many different aspects of which make a good story. So I enjoyed that. I kind of had mixed feelings about this story at times, and the dystopian war politics and structure for this novel. I felt it was a little too predictable at times, and so I didn't quite enjoy this novel as much as my first review, but I still enjoyed the fast-paced narrative style that Pierce Brown gave us. And so he won me over to get 4 stars because he had great narrative style and great visual imagery, and his descriptions of the battles and of the action that happened to Darrow and his experiences made it a really enjoying and engaging story. The characters there's not much gray area. Either you love them or you hate them. So they're heroes or they're villains. And sometimes you think they're great, and then they stab someone on the back, and you're like, oh my gosh, these are bad characters now. Or you're always wondering about these characters, but you know that they are either on one side or the other. There's not much gray. Brown and his plot twists kind of surprised me more than a few times. So, yeah, long live Darrow. It was a stirring read and a good debut work. I'd be curious enough to read Golden Sun and Morning Star after a break of maybe a year or two. I'll pick up the sequel books. But I'd like to read. I'd like to read a little excerpt now from the story. I let the howlers make ruin of the enemies on our soil. This is as close as I have come to home, to Lycos, in months. I bend down and take a handful of House Mars soil as my men do my work around me. Mars, home. I have flown a different banner, but I have missed my house. Enemies run to attack me. They see my blade, know who I am. I walk impervious. My pulse armor is my shield. Severo and the Howlers act as my sword. All right. So I hope you enjoyed this review. If you haven't heard about Red Rising by Pierce Brown, it's a Goodreads favorite. So it is a story that is quite popular. And this series is pretty well known now, but if you haven't run across it, you can find one in any bookstore or library. And I enjoyed the story. And if you would care to pick up the story and read it, I'm sure you'd have a good time reading it as well. So, okay. Thank you so much for your time this evening. And take care, friends. Bye now.